It's been roughly a decade since this nightmarish event unfolded. I grew up in a fairly small family home, and for most of my childhood I had to share a bedroom with my older brother. We each had our own twin bed on opposite walls, along with separate closets and dressers. There was barely any spare space, not even enough for a desk. The room wasn't suffocating, but it definitely wasn't roomy either. When my brother left for college, I didn't waste a moment. With his permission, I got rid of his bed and turned the extra space into my own little study corner. At that age, having a desk in my room felt like a necessity. It was such a relief not having to do homework in the basement or my dad's office anymore. That setup worked fine for 2 years until I left for college myself. A few years later, after graduating, my brother landed a job nearby and moved back in with our parents. Naturally, he reclaimed his old room, undoing all the changes I had made. At first, I felt annoyed, but my parents reminded me that I had done the exact same thing to him years earlier. Fair enough, I couldn't argue. When I graduated and returned home, I didn't have my old room anymore. The only spare place was the small guest room upstairs, right next to my dad's office. The room sat directly above the garage, so whenever the garage door opened, the entire floor shook for several seconds. The room wasn't spacious, but it had 2 windows, one overlooking the driveway and the other facing the side yard. Not perfect, but private enough. The incident took place on a quiet Friday evening. My parents had gone to the shore for the weekend, and my brother was away in Baltimore for work. I had come home drained after a rough day at my job and decided to spend the evening indoors. Around 11:30 p.m., I was lying in bed reading, enjoying the rare silence of the house. That's when I heard it, the unmistakable rumble of the garage door lifting, followed by the familiar vibration shaking the floor. At first, I brushed it off, but then it hit me. No one from my family was supposed to be home. My parents were away until Sunday, and my brother wasn't due back until the next afternoon. The realization made my chest tighten. I quickly jumped to the window, trying to spot movement in the driveway. The garage was definitely open, but I couldn't see whether a car had pulled in. My pulse quickened. I grabbed an old baseball bat from the closet and began creeping down the stairs, trying to convince myself there was an innocent explanation. Maybe a malfunction. Maybe my brother came back early. Maybe my parents forgot something. Halfway down, I froze. Faint voices echoed from the other side of the house where the bedrooms were. At least 2 people. That's when I knew for certain. Someone had broken in. I called 911, whispered my address, and left the line open in my pocket. The dispatcher told me to hide and stay quiet. But something inside me refused to just wait. Against better judgment, I tightened my grip on the bat and crept toward the voices. By the time I reached my parents' bedroom, the sounds were clear. Drawers sliding, things being tossed around. They were searching for valuables. My heart pounded. I burst into the room yelling, swinging the bat over my head. 2 men spun around, startled. I managed to strike one across the leg, sending him stumbling. The other charged at me, slamming me to the floor. He was much stronger and easily wrestled the bat out of my hands before wrapping his fingers around my throat. I gasped, clawing at his arms as he pressed down harder. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the injured man dragging himself toward us, clutching something metallic. A knife. The horrifying truth sank in. I wasn't getting out of this alive. I felt the suffocating weight of finality and thought of my mother. How shattered she would be if I died here. And then, faint but growing, came the sound of sirens. The intruders must have heard it too, because the next thing I remember was the second man swinging the bat toward my head. Everything went black. When I woke up, a police officer was leaning over me, asking if I could hear him. My head was throbbing, but I was conscious. The back door of my parents' bedroom was wide open. The burglars had fled as soon as they realized the cops were close. Paramedics checked me for injuries and insisted on a hospital visit, but I refused. I gave the officers my account. By then, the burglars had vanished. My parents were furious when I told them. Rightfully so. Had I hidden instead of playing hero, the police might have caught the men. Despite an investigation and neighborhood search, the intruders were never found. The very next day, my parents installed a full security system. Cameras, motion sensors, alarms. But one thing still gnawed at me. How did they know how to open the garage? The remote button was hidden in my dad's car, which I often left unlocked in the driveway. Whoever broke in must have known our habits and schedules. They knew my parents were away, they knew my brother was out of town, and they knew exactly where to look. That was the most disturbing part. The idea that it wasn't random. It was someone familiar with us. I won't say the night ruined my life, but it did change my perspective. When you face the thought of dying and accepted it, something in you shifts forever. That chilling realization that you might not live to see another day is unlike anything else. It's a feeling I'll never forget. A few summers back, when I was still living with my parents in the same house I grew up in, something happened that I'll never forget. I was 17 at the time. Out of nowhere, my parents decided to leave for a few days on their own. That almost never happened. They were always home, always watching over things, never the type to just take off together. In fact, I couldn't remember a single other time they had done it. Naturally, I saw this as my one chance to have the place to myself. So, I invited over my girlfriend back then, MJ, to stay the weekend. It felt like an opportunity I'd probably never get again. Complete freedom. MJ had a mischievous streak that made every situation a little more exciting, and honestly, that was part of her charm. Looking back, it was also part of why things didn't last between us. But that's another story. The moment her eyes landed on the glowing pool in the backyard, I should have guessed what she was going to say. With that sly grin of hers, she suggested we skinny dip. I resisted at first, reminding her the neighbors could see, but she kept pushing. She was right, we might never get a chance like this again. Eventually, her playful energy wore me down, and soon we were splashing around in the warm water under the cool night air. As silly as it sounds, it felt like something out of a romance movie. The pool sat right outside these huge bay windows that looked into the living room. Because the lights inside were on, and it was pitch dark outside, we had this clear view of the whole first floor like it was a stage play. For a while, that view made me feel secure, like even though we were outside, we were still connected to the safety of the house, but that comfort didn't last long. While MJ was talking about something, I can't even remember what, I glanced up at the windows and froze. On the far wall of the living room, I saw a shadow. Not just any shadow, but one that moved, like someone was walking inside the house. My chest tightened and I felt pure panic, though I tried not to show it. Leaning close, I whispered to MJ that we needed to get out of the pool. She didn't argue. We climbed out quietly, dried off quickly, and I told her to hide inside the pool house, turn off the lights, and wait for me. The playful spark in her eyes was gone. She looked terrified, though she was holding it together. I slipped into the kitchen as quietly as possible, grabbed a knife off the counter and started searching the house. That's how my parents raised me, to deal with things head on. As I crept from room to room, I noticed little signs that confirmed someone had been inside. A dining chair slightly pushed out, a crooked picture frame, a coffee mug sitting out that I hadn't touched. None of it made sense. A burglar wouldn't waste time with things like that. I searched every room downstairs, but there was no one. All the doors were locked, the windows closed tight. My confidence faded as my heart raced faster with each step. I finally gave in and called the police. They arrived quickly and searched everywhere, the house, the yard, every corner. But they found nothing. No broken locks, no footprints, no proof that anyone had gotten in. One officer said maybe I had scared the person away, but I wasn't convinced. By then, it was too late to do much else. MJ and I locked up every door, barricaded the bedroom, and tried to sleep. Around 4 a.m., I woke to the creak of floorboards above us. At first, I thought my mind was playing tricks, but then I clearly heard slow, careful footsteps. Someone was upstairs, moving around. Adrenaline shot through me. I grabbed the knife on the nightstand and told MJ to stay put. Rushing out, I tried to catch whoever it was. By the time I reached the front door, it was wide open. Whoever had been there was already gone. I didn't even bother calling the police again. Morning revealed something worse. All of the kitchen knives were gone, every single one. Along with that, small things were missing. Some cash, a few watches, random electronics. But the knives were what chilled me. It felt like a message though I couldn't figure out what it meant. When my parents returned and I told them everything, they were shockingly calm about it. And while I've never been the type to scare easily, that night left a mark. To this day, I still don't understand how someone got in, or where they were hiding when the police searched. It remains one of the strangest, most unsettling experiences of my life. This all unfolded slowly, over a span of 3 to 4 years when I was still a kid. I can't recall the exact age I was when it started, but I do remember the very first nightmare because it became something that returned again and again, almost like clockwork. Once every couple of months, the dream was never like normal ones. Instead of seeing things from my own eyes, I always found myself floating above my bed, watching my body below as though I were a camera mounted on the ceiling. That strange, detached perspective terrified me every time. I would try desperately to move closer to my sleeping self, almost like swimming through the air, but all I could ever manage was to slowly turn my head and glance around the room. I knew it wasn't real, yet that realization never made it feel any less disturbing. After the initial panic calmed down, I'd begin noticing details about my bedroom that weren't right. The first thing was always my digital clock, glowing on the nightstand. But instead of moving forward, its numbers ticked backward. That detail alone was enough to make my stomach sink. But there was always more. On the walls in my dresser, taped haphazardly, were childish crayon sketches. They were always the same image. A group of people holding hands, smiling, with one smaller figure among them who seemed to be me. Behind them stood a house topped with a blue roof. What unsettled me most was that I had no memory of ever making those drawings. I wasn't even the type of kid who drew much. And then, always, I would notice the toy train. It was a little model I had lost years earlier, but in these dreams, it was always sitting somewhere new on the floor, as if someone had been playing with it. Eventually, like a script I couldn't change, I'd feel a pull to look at my bedroom window. The second I turned my gaze, he would appear, a man just inches from the glass staring at me. His gray hair was cropped short and he had a gash or scar across his left temple. He wouldn't speak. He would just watch me for several seconds before clawing at the window like he wanted to open it. That's when I would always wake up. Sometimes I bolted for the window the moment I snapped out of the dream, hoping to catch some evidence. Other times I was too frozen with fear to move. But no matter what, the result was the same. No scratches, no smudges, nothing. By the 4th time it happened, I told my parents. My mom reassured me that recurring dreams were fairly common for kids. My dad added that I had nothing to fear because they were always nearby if I needed them. He even walked me outside, hand in hand, to prove no one had been anywhere near my room. The ground was undisturbed, no footprints, no signs of anything. That should have calmed me, but it didn't. Even as young as I was, I knew having the exact same nightmare over and over meant something more. And then, just like that, the dreams stopped. For almost half a year, I didn't experience them once. Eventually, I let myself believe it had all ended, but then it returned. Everything in the dream was the same. The clock counting down, the childlike drawings, the toy train. But one thing was different. My window was wide open. The second I realized that, I woke up. Only this time I couldn't move. My entire body was locked in sleep paralysis. The worst part was that I could feel cold air brushing across my skin, as though the window in real life was truly open. For what felt like forever, though it was probably 5 minutes, I lay frozen, convinced the man was about to climb through. When I finally managed to move again, I rushed to the window. It was locked. But that did nothing to erase the terror I'd felt. Months later, I had the dream again, and by then I had trained myself to expect it. I'd go to bed thinking about it, preparing myself. Somehow that worked. The more I braced for it, the less frightening it became. After a few more times, I could even wake up from it without checking the window at all. Still, I eventually told my parents again, this time with more detail. When I described the man's face and mentioned the cut on his temple, something shifted in their expressions. My dad interrupted me to ask if I was certain about the scar. When I said yes, he exchanged a look with my mom that told me there was more to this than I knew. They brushed it off at first, but a few days later, they sat me down. That's when they told me about Brian. He wasn't family, but he had been a close friend of my dad's in college. When I was very young, he would often watch me while my parents worked. I had no memory of him, but apparently I'd been attached to him as a toddler. Something happened between him and my dad, though, something bad enough that they cut ties completely. The only detail they gave me was that Brian had a permanent scar on his forehead from an accident long before I was born. My dad admitted he believed the dreams were my mind digging up something buried deep, fragments of early memories I was too young to consciously recall. He said I used to cry when Brian left the house, that I always wanted him to be the one to tuck me in. According to him, there was no other way I would know about that scar. After that conversation, the dreams slowed down again. For the next year, I only had them once or twice, but in the fourth year, something happened that shattered the fragile calm. One night, after waking from the nightmare, I instinctively looked at my window, and I swear I saw something move outside. Just a flicker of motion, but it was enough. I screamed for my parents, and this time they didn't dismiss it. My dad ran outside barefoot while my mom clung to me. When he returned, he whispered something to her and called the police, or at least that's what they told me. I never heard sirens. The next day, my dad admitted he had seen what looked like faint footprints beneath my window. He swore it couldn't have been Brian since we'd moved houses and he wouldn't have known where we lived. He promised nothing bad would happen again, and strangely enough, he was right. I never had the dream after that night. My parents avoid the subject to this day, and I've stopped asking. What unsettles me most, though, is the thought that maybe the dreams weren't just dreams. Maybe every single time there really was someone outside watching me. Whether it was Brian or some stranger, I'll never know. But part of me can't shake the feeling that my parents know more than they ever told me.